So listen to this. There are now less than 50 days until the World Cup starts, which means one thing. I need an excuse to rant about it. So if you want to be the know-it-all who's always bothering his friends with supposedly fun facts about every single team in the tournament from Brazil to Cape Verde, well, this is a video for you. Because I'm not just gonna throw predictions at you, you best believe we're gonna talk about every single team. So, first of all, it must be said, there are now 48 teams in the tournament. Of course, the groups will be weaker. For comparison, according to the World Football ELO rankings, the strongest group of all time came all the way back in 1962, when there were just 24 teams, with 1st ranked Brazil, 5th ranked Czechoslovakia, 6th ranked Spain, and 15th ranked Mexico, who ironically have now dropped to 20th, but are somehow the highest ranked team in their group, despite only getting the pot 1 spot because they're the hosts. Still, fear not, there is plenty to be excited about. Here's my Group A prediction. In last place, South Africa, since their own manager has chosen to spend the last few months constantly criticizing his own players and changing his starting 11 over and over again, only to lose 2-1 to Panama. In 3rd place, South Korea. It's simple. Son has only played one full 90 for them over the last year. Kim Min-jae has been going through a rough moment losing minutes at Bayern, and they just got demolished 4-0 by the Ivory Coast. However, I do predict they'll get at least the 4 points needed to guarantee qualification as one of the best 3rd place teams. Now, Czechia or Mexico for the 1st place? I'd say Mexico are easily the best team. I definitely got my eye on their 17-year-old prodigy Gilberto Mora, who created the most chances out of anyone in the Under-20 World Cup, despite being the youngest outfield player in the whole tournament. Regardless, as for Czechia, though they did greatly upset me by ruining Troy Parrott's chances of completing the greatest carry job in World Cup qualifying history since CR7 versus Sweden, and even though they only got through the playoffs thanks to 2 penalty shootouts, I'm feeling like 2021 Patrick Schick will make a comeback and secure them the 1st place. Okay, so Group B. Jesus Christ, there's 11 groups to talk about. Group B, last place, Qatar. It's literally the first time they've rightfully qualified to the World Cup. 4 years ago, as the hosts, they literally lost every single game. Last year, they were so poor in the Arab Cup that they lost to Palestine. And now, with the war in Iran, they had to cancel every single one of their warm-up matches. Thank God the group is weak, cause otherwise this would have been a bloodbath. Still, I predict Canada in 3rd place. Juventus have absolutely sucked the soul out of Jonathan David as they do with every other striker. And Alphonso Davies has spent 628 days on the sidelines since the pandemic. So, yeah. Regardless, again, I do predict they'll make the knockouts. After all, 8 out of the 12 3rd place teams do win. Canada could easily demolish Qatar for that sweet goal difference. Now, Bosnia and Switzerland. You may say that I'm too much of a romantic and that there is no question, and I think you're right. As much as I want Dzeko to add another chapter to his fairy tale after bringing down the Italians, as much as it would be nice to see Bakhtarevic balling out in the USA where he was born, Switzerland have a very strong core. They just scored 3 against Germany and damn near took the draw, so they'll get 1st. Now, Group C. Zero doubts will be in last place in this one. It is Haiti, who, unlike what you may think, have actually already been to a World Cup in 1974, though I doubt it will help them much in such a tough group. 3rd place will have to go to Scotland. Sure, McTominay has brought his Neapolitan ways into the national team, breaking their image as consistent bottlers and actually sealing the deal, putting them in their 1st World Cup in 27 years with a bicycle kick no less. Though usually they're not flashy, they're solid and they're experienced. Even Scott is now 29 years old. However, not only do I think Morocco will outperform them, I could see them take 1st place in the group ahead of Brazil. Sure, En-Nesyri forgot how to score goals and Ziyech disappeared from the face of the earth, but Bono is always tremendous, Hakimi is Hakimi, and at the end of the day, they're technically African champions. Meanwhile, I don't think Ancelotti has had enough time to cause much of an impact on Brazil, and anything could happen with Neymar. People say he's washed, but he has 13 goal contributions in his last 12 games for Santos. And at the end of the day, Brazil has always done good under pressure. In 1970, they sacked their manager right before the tournament and won. In 1984, they barely qualified, and again, they won. And in 2002, after months of talks about whether or not Romário should be called up, with Brazil's own president weighing in at one point, all oddly similar to what is going on with Neymar, well, they left him out, got there after a year of some of the worst football they ever played, and won. Who knows? As for third place, it all depends on how many goals Scotland can score against Haiti and how many they'll concede to Brazil, but I reckon they'll make it. Now, Group D, USA. So, Australia finishes last. Not that they have much of an edge on Paraguay. They're probably the least South American team to come out of South America. I mean, they barely ever score more than a goal a game. Both teams are just painfully average on paper. Though, honestly, given how Australia played against Argentina in 22, I wouldn't be shocked if any two teams in this group just swapped places. Regardless, simply due to my undying appreciation for Arda Güler and Kenay Yildiz, I'm going against the supposed home advantage and putting Turkey ahead of the United States in first place. After all, they did just get absolutely battered by Belgium. So, Group E. First and foremost, we got Curacao, which feels unreal at a World Cup. Smallest ever nation to qualify. Only made it because the VAR overturned the penalty in the last minute of their last qualifier. And the strangest of all, Tahith Chong is the only player in the squad to have actually been born in Curacao. Which sort of makes sense considering they're the first non-sovereign nation to qualify since the East Indies in 1938. In other words, they're basically part of the Netherlands. However, as much as I like an underdog, they have not won a single match since their manager Dick Advocaat had to step down due to personal reasons, which is extra sad considering that he would have been the oldest ever manager at a World Cup. But yeah, Curacao in last place. Then in third, the Ivory Coast, who once again need to A. concede as little as possible to Germany, and B. absolutely demolish Curacao in order to get through to the knockout stage, which I think they will. Now, for one of the most interesting squads in the tournament, Ecuador. Moisés Caicedo, William Pacho, Estupinha, Kendry Páez, Hincapié, and of course, Ener Valencia, who was still their top scorer in qualifying. These guys have literally not lost a game since a one-goal defeat to Brazil in 2024. In fact, they finished above them in qualifying. Of course, with Caicedo suspended for the opener, things could get rough, since they heavily rely on their defensive solidity to get results. Only 5 goals conceded in their last 18 games. These are proper dark horses, people. Regardless, no matter how much momentum Germany have lost since their incredible 2024 Euros, with the country turning against Nagelsmann, who seemingly cannot stop playing the likes of Leroy Sané and Goretzka, no matter how well Lennart Karl does for Bayern. In fact, I think that's the key for Germany. How much time Lennart Karl gets, how well Musiala recovers from injury, and how much the slower tempo of the World Cup allows Florian Wirtz to get back to his best. That's it. As for Group F, well, Tunisia, they're tough to beat. They got 3 points off of France in the last World Cup. Aside from that, honestly, they don't excite me much. I guess Khedira's brother plays there. That's cool. Now, as for the other 3 teams though, I could see anything happen. Japan has Mitoma, Ayase Ueda, Hitsudowa, who was incredible in 2022, Minamino, Kamada, but it's not about individual talent, they're a unit. At times, they'll play some of the nicest football you'll ever see, and honestly, at this point, no one should be surprised. Every World Cup, people come out shouting, "Oh my god, how come Japan is so good?" They've been great for a while, man. They just beat England, last year they beat Brazil. They literally haven't lost to an European team since prime Belgium beat them in the 2018 World Cup in injury time. They're really good. And you know who else is good? Sweden. Gyökeres is still an absolute machine for them. 14 goals and 5 assists in his last 13 games. That's the Gyökeres from Sporting there, not the guy from Arsenal. And if they get the Alexander Isak from Newcastle back, plus Bergvall and Hugo Larsson, I don't know, man. I see potential there. Now, as for the Netherlands, really strong defense, really tight midfield, at least on paper. But even on paper, that attack looks disappointing. Where's the new Van Nistelrooy, Van Persie, Bergkamp or Van Basten? No wonder their performances have been so lukewarm despite having only one defeat since the Euros. Regardless, my guess for one of the hardest groups to predict: Netherlands first, Sweden second, Japan third, but secures the 4 points and goes through easily. Finally, we're halfway through Group G. We've got New Zealand, the lowest ranked team in the competition at 85th in the world, who somehow only won 2 out of their 10 friendlies, after qualifying with a 29-1 goal difference since, well, Australia plays with the Asian teams for some reason, so their competition was Micronesia and Fiji. Hilariously, despite having gone unbeaten the last time they qualified to a World Cup, thanks to 3 draws, they still have not won a single match, despite this being their 3rd World Cup. So, yeah, they're going last. Now, Iran. FIFA has refused to move their games to Mexico, so who knows if they'll even play. Let's put them 3rd and Egypt 2nd, even though Salah has been in horrendous form. And at the top, of course, Belgium, who are the best team here, even if I have virtually no other hopes for them, aside from watching Jeremy Doku attempt to break JJ Okocha's record for the most dribbles completed in a World Cup match. Yeah, let's move on to Group H. So, my Cape Verdean brothers have qualified to their first ever World Cup, 3rd smallest nation ever after only Curaçao and Iceland. Still, they've managed to top a qualification group with Cameroon in it by basically going out and trying to find as many players with Cape Verdean ancestry as they could. They literally found Roberto Lopes through LinkedIn. The guy ignored their message for years because he doesn't even speak Portuguese, but indeed, his father is half Portuguese, half Cape Verdean, so now he's learning Creole. Still, I'm gonna take some risks here and say that I'll get 3rd place over Saudi Arabia. And as for the rest of the group, it's pretty simple. Unless Fede Valverde pulls off some miracle, Uruguay have been so poor over the last year that, had it not been for their group being so weak, I could probably argue that they could finish 3rd. So yeah, Spain in 1st, easily. They've been top 2 in the world for a couple years now, and they've had Dean Housen, Juan Garcia, even if they do not need him. And as for Rodri's form, well, worst case scenario, they've got Zubimendi. Now, speaking of top 2, France is in Group I. It is, in my opinion, the best group in the tournament. However, I refuse to call it a group of death. There is simply no comparison to what we used to have. Yet, I must say, first of all, shout out to Iraq for even making it to the tournament. With the airspace blocked in their country, they had to travel by ground to Jordan before flying to their playoff match, and even through all of that mess, they came back to the World Cup after 40 years without qualifying. Incredible. Still, they're finishing last, I think. When it comes to Norway, they've got a monstrous Haaland, who scored in every game he played for them in 2025, going on a run of 21 goals and 3 assists in 11 games. In the process, beating Italy 7-1 on aggregate and qualifying absolutely unbeaten. Not to mention, of course, Sheldrup, Odegaard, Nusa, Oscar Bob and Sorloth, who, together, I think will be able to batter Iraq and take 2nd from Senegal on goal difference. Regardless, the champions of the people will make it through in 3rd place, while France, surprise surprise, they'll win. Easily the most ridiculously stacked squad in the world, no matter how much criticism the Shah gets, with Cherki, Mbappé, Dembélé, Doué, Barcola, Olise and Thuram in the team, how are you not going to win? They lost Ekitike and they barely even cared. Think about it. Yeah, Group J, so Jordan. First time in a World Cup too, and they only got 1 player valued over $1 million on transfer market, so yeah, they're going last. As for 2nd and 3rd, well, Austria already had a strong core with Savitzer, Leimer, Alaba and Baumgartner. And now they've got both Chukwemeka and Paul Vanner to switch allegiance from England and Germany respectively, so they're even stronger. I reckon strong enough to beat Algeria now that Mahrez and Awar are both playing in Saudi, so they'll take 2nd place. Though I think Algeria will get through in 3rd place. Which leaves us with the reigning champions. Otamendi is suspended for the first game, and Argentina have always lost their opening game after World Cup title. In fact, aside from France 4 years ago, the champions curse still looms in everyone's minds. However, given how they've played in qualifying, surely they'll take first place. Though, interestingly, that leads us to Group K, Portugal's group. So, Uzbekistan is in their first ever World Cup. Obviously, you know Kuzanov. However, their key player is actually Shomorodov of Basaksehir, who's their all-time top scorer with 45 goals in 91 games. But even though the Congo had not made it to the tournament since 1974, back when they were still known as Zaire, I think they'll take third place. They've got Wan-Bissaka, the GOAT Mbemba, Simon Banza and Yohan Wissa. They're good. Though I think not good enough to go through as one of the best third place teams. They'll go out in the group stage. As for Portugal and Colombia, well, considering that James Rodriguez tends to get resurrected every international tournament, that Luis Diaz has got more goals for Bayern this season than Robben or Ribéry ever got, and that Luis Suarez has been balling out for Sporting, they could top a lot of groups in the tournament. However, not this one. Portugal. We have got the best left back in the world. We've got one of the best upcoming goalkeepers. Even if he does tend to make some mistakes in the biggest moments, we've got easily the best midfield trio in international football. And though our attack has seen better days, we got a few lesser known players who could make an impact. And after all, the old guy has 14 goal contributions in his last 14 games for Portugal, and he was amazing in the Nations League, which we won. So, though Portugal has the tendency to go against expectations, doing good with bad teams and doing awful with so-called golden generations, I'm incredibly invested, even if tremendously cautious. But I think we get first place. Now, finally, Group L, England's group. So, Panama, they've surely gotten better since 2018, but they're surely going in last place, right? Well, Ghana did just lose 5-1 to Austria. They didn't even qualify for the most recent AFCON, plus Kudus is injured, and now their manager got sacked. But his replacement is Carlos Queiroz. It's gonna be his 5th World Cup. He's a tournament specialist. So, I think Panama will have to settle for last place, though Ghana won't make it through either. Now, England and Croatia will open the tournament by facing each other, so that will be tremendously decisive. But as much as Modric will still be running the midfield, I think England wins. Tuchel is perfect for knockout tournaments. They went unbeaten in qualifying, and they've got a great track record in recent tournaments, so why not? Now, for the 32 matches of the first round of knockouts, we gotta go fast. First two, Germany versus Paraguay. I don't think there's much to talk about here. France versus Japan. Tough luck for Japan. I feel like they could go much further, but France is just several levels above them. And at least one above Germany, so I think they should make the quarters. Then Mexico versus Bosnia, and I'll keep going with the fairy tale, Bosnia into the last 16. However, they'll play either the Netherlands or Brazil, our first big matchup. And man, even though historically the Netherlands has the advantage over Brazil, even though I put Brazil second in their group, I think they take this one, and unfortunately, they'll beat Bosnia as well. Now, Colombia versus Croatia, and this may be a bit controversial, but I'm on the Colombian hype train, so I'll pick them. And then between Spain and Austria, they'll obviously play Spain, but they'll simply have to lose. Now, Turkey versus Canada, and again, I just have way too much faith on Arda Güler and Kenan Yildiz, so they'll take this one easily. Then, between Belgium and South Korea, though I think people underestimate South Korea as well, even if not as much as Japan, they have taken some beatings lately, so I predict a Lukaku hat-trick there. After which, between Turkey and Belgium, as much as I want to say Turkey again, I predict a high-scoring game with Belgium taking the win by a single goal. Regardless, then we get some truly tough matchups. 4 teams that could surprise everyone and put a serious dent in this bracket. Morocco, standard dark horses for a few years and now the villains of world football. And Sweden, a team that I'm very hopeful for. However, here I think Morocco, and alongside them, between Ecuador, every analyst's favorite hot take, and Norway, every casual's favorite dark horse, you could call them the Belgium of new. I do think they'll pull a Belgium, so Ecuador makes it through, but Morocco wins the dark horse bracket. Then we got Czechia and Scotland, and honestly, maybe I overhyped them too much in the groups. I don't really have too much hope for Czechia. So I think we'll get a McSauce moment, and meanwhile, England beats Senegal. So just like that, we get England versus Scotland. And I predict a great watch and a 90th minute Maguire winner. Which leaves us first Argentina versus Uruguay, playing each other for the 211th time in their history. Not joking, by the way. Literally the most common international matchup in history. And as per usual, Argentina wins. As for the other side, I don't even know what to say. This match clearly won't take place, so just to make things easier, I guess the hosts go through. Let's call it home advantage. Regardless, such a thing will not stop Argentina from demolishing them, putting them through to the quarters, and finally, Switzerland versus Algeria. Again, experienced squad on the Swiss side, so I'll give them the advantage, but it doesn't mean much, since with Portugal facing the Ivory Coast on the other side, well, I'm sure we're gonna make it look harder than it should be, but we'll beat both, making the quarterfinals, which sounds interesting. So, getting on with it, France versus Brazil. I must say, really tough draw for France so far. They could have already fallen to Germany. After all, last year when they beat them for the Nations League third place playoff, Germany actually had the most shots, the most possession, and won on expected goals. However, I do think they'll beat Brazil regardless. Even if Estevão and Endrick pop off, even if Neymar rises from the dead, only fatigue could really impact France, with a lot of their top players having had really intense club seasons. Still, no matter what, high-scoring game, and France makes it through to the semis, where, to make matters worse for them, after a calm and collected 2-3-0 win against Belgium, they'll have to face Spain. Remember what I said, top two, that is the final before the final. Now, on the other side, if we were in the Southgate era, I'd probably give the win to Morocco, but with Tuchel, he's just a perfect guy for this match. You need to know precisely what players to bring in and disrupt Morocco. I'm feeling a goal by Nico O'Reilly to put England through to the semis. Which brings us to the one game that may attract more viewership than the final. Portugal versus Argentina. The nations of the two greatest footballers on the planet have never faced each other in an official match. But now it almost feels like the script is making it a mandatory matchup. There's just no way this isn't gonna happen. And unfortunately, it will likely be the last international game for one of those two players. Look, obviously, kinda hard not to be biased here. It is what it is. Still, I'm fully ready to be humiliated here. In fact, if Nico Paz finds his way into the starting 11, it would be a completely different game. But, assuming not, I think what would happen here is simple. We dominate the midfield, then, knowing how much we usually struggle against low blocks, Argentina try to play that game. But the thing is, I think Portugal finally has enough tools in their arsenal to break past that. Or maybe we just get lucky with a Cristian Romero red card. So we're through. Regardless, it doesn't matter, because even though I think that both Portugal and Argentina could beat England in the semis, well, Spain has not lost a game in 311 days and France has not lost a game in 314 days, as ironically, Spain's streak is only shorter because they beat France 3 days before it started. However, in that game, they famously went in front 4-0 in just 55 minutes, only for Cherki to come in, score, assist, put in the pass for another goal, all in what was his French debut. Man, I think he's the most exciting player on the planet right now. And I think France's success depends on how well they capitalize on him, and Michael Olise, of course. But Cherki could be the perfect super sub. One of the ways they could use their depth to alleviate the fatigue that I mentioned before and surprise Spain. But with that, I must say that whether I'm right or wrong about any of these predictions, given how the bracket is set up, I think we'll either get a redo of the Euro 2016 final, a redo of the 2022 final, a redo of the Nations League final, or, of course, Spain versus Argentina. But no. As much as I think Spain is ridiculously strong, if I had a gun to my head, I'd go for France. And I also think they could beat both Portugal or Argentina. So, that's my pick. Portugal versus France in the final. France wins, though I'll still hope for a miracle. That's it.